Hello, everybody, and welcome back to 32 All the Way. We've been waiting to do this interview for a while because there's technical problems on both sides. There's something going on. I have David Gulotta. How you doing, Dave?
Doing well, Paul. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. So we've got some interesting stuff to talk about here. Dave has a book out that he was working in a series called A Crew of Ganges. Now, am I doing this right? It's Crew of Ganges, and this first one is called The Age of Unity?
This is Crew of Ganges. Got it right here.
Yes.
And it's the first volume of the Crucible Spirals trilogy.
Okay.
It's
And
a hefty book, but
yeah,
really get in there.
all right, so let's give a little bit of background here about what we're going to be talking about. The Age of Unity is ended. Merrick Langman is the bodyguard for the young Jake Verdstrom, who is destined to become captain of the terraforming vessel Ganges, as the generation ship enters orbit of the next planet chosen for future colonization. Chaos erupts, threatening the lives of the crew. Command sector is rife with political maneuvering and hidden plots. Mutinous strifers are bent on destroying the ship through the use of deadly sabotage. Surrounded by subterfuge and rivalry, Merrick begins to note a pattern to the chaos gripping the ship, one that threatens their holy mission, and millions of lives are at stake. Merrick is forced to head off on his own to solve the mystery concerning who is behind the devastation that is tearing mighty vessel apart. Can a lone bodyguard of low rank shed light upon the terrible truth that grips Ganges? The crucible spirals have begun. And you have a great little thing here. We've got a little review where somebody was commenting from late April here saying Crew Ganges is a unique sci-fi that tells the story of the generation ship Ganges as it travels through the void, terraforming dead planets into lush paradises for colonists from the crew's planet of origin, Earth. So if everybody wants to go check that out, you should go right away. We'll also be talking a little bit about Clockmakers preceded this one. It's not in the series, but Clockmakers was out and written before this one.
No, actually it came out second.
Okay.
That one is a fantasy book. It's a standalone. I've got that one right here as well. And this one is a kind of an odd, almost psychedelic fantasy.
Okay.
And it's a bit of world hopping there, and none of them make any sense, but that's good. That's what the whole thing's about. So, strap in.
Right on. So let's talk about Crew of Ganges a little bit. I'm not a huge sci-fi fan. I mean, I know Star Wars, Star Trek, Battlestar Galactica, and all that. I go back and forth, but what I always find interesting, what I always ask people is, you seem to have one or two views when people are going into the future, they're going into space. We've got the utopian society that winds up being the dystopian society, or we've got the dystopian society that kind of winds up being like what we have now, or flips over to utopian society. Where are you in this in my my little analogy there?
Crew of Ganges is about the delicacy of any kind of utopian society. All utopian societies have the seeds of their own destruction within them. And that's what the Crew of Ganges discover through this trilogy. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that I feel that dystopian and utopian societies are basically the fever dreams of mankind. And it doesn't last. It never lasts. So I wanted to point out those flaws.
That again, I'm not a huge science fiction reader, but that seems to be what comes up is that if the utopian society that is always going to be utopian never is, and the dystopian one sometimes isn't all that bad.
This is because we seek perfection, which we can never actually achieve. There is no perfection.
And I think if anybody has realized anything over the, I don't know what your take is, religious or how you view the world, but the couple thousand years, let's put that as a starting point that we've been here. We're the problem. we're the problem. So it reminded me a little bit about how they were describing this, almost kind of Logan's Run.
Yeah.
Which was another. Again, not a huge science fiction guy, but I loved that movie when I was a kid.
Yeah. I think some of the people from Logan's Run would find a bit of the interior of Ganges a little on the familiar side, except for the whole thing where you die at 30. That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
They live long ages, but the ship itself is huge. It's over 500 kilometers long.
Wow.
and it averages 20 kilometers in width with levels within each of the spinning wheels. It holds a crew of 35 million at the
Wow.
point that the book comes out, although the ship is capable of holding 60 million very comfortably. Doing the math to that was, oh, that
Now,
was,
here's an interesting point. Here's what I always ask when people bring this up. You always, like, you never think about it. At least I did when I was a kid. But then when you get, I always think of the first, the shot from the first Star Trek movie, when you're actually seeing how big the ship is. Then you think
right.
to yourself, like, wow, like, where would you actually put this thing? Where would you do this? Are your numbers, sorry, one second. I don't want to say realistic because I know we're writing in a sci-fi novel. Would you have anybody looking at your numbers or your dimensions and saying this could actually work? Because what's ruined stories for me in the last couple of years is, well, there's not really a dilithium crystal. I don't care. I just want to read the story.
Oh no, this ship was designed with a lower technological level than the people who built it, so that it would be easy to repair. They're never coming home. There is no home. The ship is their home. They don't colonize. They just set up the planets for future colonists to come to. They've adapted to their ship over the generations. And
Oh,
so
okay.
if something goes wrong with the ship, they have to repair it themselves. So ease of repair was a very big factor in this. Now, yes, there are things that we don't have today, like magnetic impellers and things like that. But at the same time, how they shield their people is that the hull is 100 meters thick. Uh, at that point, they don't care if something hits the hull. They'll go back, and when they stop, and they'll patch it over because it's an exceedingly thick hull. It's almost a brute force approach to building a spacecraft. It's one of my big complaints with a lot of science fictions. And not to pick on any in particular, but I always see, like, these thin hulls peeling away or blasting away, and I'm like, no, 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 because there are meteorites out there moving at 25,000 kilometers per second, and that's going to go right through a centimeter thick hull. So why would you do that on a ship that's moving at 15% the speed of light?
Wow.
So you wouldn't do that. You'd get a nice thick hull. So everything about Ganges is like that. It's oversized, but it's also not, they don't use force fields or things like that.
Okay.
It's all very real, something you can really grab onto. I was
Okay.
very careful about that.
Yeah. Again, it seems to be, I don't know if it's just a literary concern now, but I don't know if it's Batman or it's Superman, science fiction, even Bruce Lee, who was a real live guy. Now people, he wasn't really that good, or he wasn't this, he wasn't that. Well, just go enjoy it. You know what I mean? Go and see.
Yeah,
And I know some of the technical side has to be there, but
yeah,
like my big thing whenever I hear about ships and stuff this size, you're making it very clear that they're basically never coming down.
no,
So this
never
is
coming
why
down.
it's designed that way.
Yeah, it does not land. It was built in space. It was built in the asteroid belt, and that's how they built it. They crushed down asteroids in order to process them, in order to build it, and that's what they do. They
So
stop at a new system, and then they crush down asteroids to fix the ship.
you're telling me that this is considered a lower level technology than what the people on the ship know. So would this be something our modern day standards that we could kind of understand, or did you still have to up it a little bit?
Understand? Yes. Capable of doing? We don't have the material sciences quite for that.
You just hit it on the head, right? If you can explain it to me, I don't need the nuts and bolts of how you built it, but we can see where your theory is.
Yes.
Okay. All right, that's great. Because again, when you see some of these things and they don't want to explain them, that's fine. But there are other times where I feel it's essential to kind of tell people, well, this is how they would have done it. Now, do you have to write down A, B, C, D, E, F, G, how they did? No, but I had, people do like to have an idea of how it's put together.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how come the writing, has this been forever? Has this been the choices
no,
as an
actually,
adult?
I hate typing. But I've learned to do it quickly, and I've come to actually enjoy the editing process, which is a big bonus for me. No, this came out a few years ago a friend of mine who wants to be a writer, and I decided, hey, let's try to work together. I wanted to encourage him, and he wanted to encourage me because he had heard of a dream that I had about 12 years ago. This was that dream.
Okay.
The main character, Merrick Langman, was who I was in that dream. And there's a funny story behind that. I had had neck surgery. In fact, I had died briefly during that surgery. Wow. And about a month afterwards, I'm on all kinds of painkillers, all kinds of medicines, and with this big collar around my neck. And I had this bizarre dream, and the dream seemed to go on literally for years. I woke up not knowing who I was, where I was. I looked at my ceiling and went, where am I? I got up and I'm like, why am I so short? Why is everything so big? And it wasn't until I turned around and looked out the window that I remembered who and where I was. And it was a shocking experience. So I wrote down a brief outline of what that dream was about, because you never know in the future, but it was too complex for a painting or even a series of paintings. It was just a huge thing. And I'm an artist by trade. In fact, I do my own covers.
Yes.
And over the years, I started thinking I really should write this thing down. And that's where my friend was helping me out with that. And we started writing. He was giving in some input and back and forth for a while. And then we both started going on our own. I was going on my own. I'm halfway through the book. I'm like, you know what? Let me check my notes about this dream. Dead on, including the names of all the characters and all that. I'm like, okay, yeah. I wrote this book basically from memory.
Wow.
Clockmaker is a collection of 8 of my dreams, linked by a single storyline. So I tend to work with my dreams in order to do my writing. Now, some dreams translate well into paintings, but some dreams don't. So I had to learn a whole new art form in order to do this.
That's interesting. That's a great theory to have where it was. Like I said, some people it's on their experience, some people it's from something else. Now, answer me this. Since we're talking how it was the dream, were you having a vivid recollection of what was going to be in the story, or was like every dream another chapter of adding on to it?
It was one huge dream, and it was lucid.
Okay.
In fact, I went to bed as this character and had dreams of my own, and woke up in the morning in my quarters in the ship, and so on and so on.
That's amazing.
And so on. Smell, touch, taste. There's one point where you get severely injured, and I felt that.
Wow, that's amazing.
So I do tend to lucid dream. I've been doing it since I was 4. I used to draw my nightmares. And because it was so real, I was trying to explain to my parents what had happened to me, not understanding it was a dream.
Now, were these like night terrors?
Some of them were very good dreams. That's the nice part about it. When it's a really good dream, hey, it's just like you experienced it yesterday. And I remember my dreams as vividly as I remember anything else. It's sometimes hard for me to tell the two apart.
I sleepwalk and I sleep talk, and I've been with my partner now for about 4 years, and she had mentioned last time that she said, when you're under stress or things are piling up at work, or like when I was still bouncing, she said, like, you could tell when you had a bad night, because you'd just be like, I'll fucking kill you and telling somebody something. But we've noticed with the pandemic and working more at home and just being together and trying to put out a schedule, she's like, I don't know the last time you've had it. So people who have to experience them all the time, I don't want to say I empathize, because obviously this is how I've created your art, but like I've woken up and like my fists are balled, there's sweat running down my face, and I'm ready to kill somebody. And she's had to tap me on the shoulder a couple of times and say, hey, it's me, we're in bed, everything's cool. And I don't know about you, but I always get to that point where you're drifting back into reality, that this is real life, but you can't process it yet, or you're embarrassed of it. So you try and play it off and be like, yeah, I know. And then I think in my head, man, fuck, that was weird. Was it ever that point with you, or you woke up right away knowing that you were leaving this world?
The awake world for me is the consistent dream.
Okay.
It's the one that keeps coming back. That's
Okay.
very, very consistent. So from my point of view, like I said, it can be very difficult for me to decide when am I dreaming and when am I awake. Fortunately, I can still function. I can still paint. I can still write. You know, I can still drive my car. But this, the reality that I am sharing with everybody else here, to my mind, is the consistent recurring dream.
Okay.
So I wake
That's
up
an
from
interesting
one
take.
dream into this one again.
That's an interesting take. That's very interesting. Now we're talking the art and the writing. Is it? Can you give me a percentage there? Is the writing taking over the art? Is it 50-50? Or do you consider yourself the artist and then you walked into this writer thing? Because from my point of view, people, oh man, you're an author, and I'm like, I wrote a book. I'm like, I don't know if I'm throwing the author tag on there yet. I always find it a little condescending or a little presumptuous when the author before the person's name on every page and stuff. And I have my name and I have my degrees and then I have author at the end. Now maybe that'll maybe if there's 4 or 5 books down the way, that'll change. But where do you see yourself with that? Is this an offshoot of the art? Is it consider yourself an artist altogether?
It's an art all on its own. It's just another form of communication. I consider myself a compulsive communicator.
Okay.
I do lectures, I do writing, I do painting, I teach private students. It's just another way for me to communicate. Over the past couple of years, the writing has dominated only because I've been so obsessed in getting this dream done, getting that trilogy out there. Now, all 3 books have been written. Right now, the second book is going through its last round of editing. The third book is going through its first round of editing, and the first book has already been published. So that was all done in a rush, just
Yes.
wanting to get it out. And as I'm getting them out, I'm finding myself thinking more about the painting. And plus, I'm doing the covers for my books anyway.
Yeah.
So, that keeps my hand in there while I'm obsessing on my writing career.
It's great to be able to have, like, I don't know what, like, obviously you had the story first, right? You talked about the dreams and you talked about how vivid they all were, but I mean, I'm assuming that maybe sometimes the painting would just be like, yeah, man, that's what this part of the book is about.
Yes.
And we had trouble when we were doing when I've been doing mine or trying to put my ideas together because I'm a rudimentary, somebody will say, well, draw it out to me. And it's a stick guy with a with a gun in his hand. Well, what's that? Well, you told me to draw it. I don't know how to draw, but to have the correlation or the connection of the two of them to say, this is what we're going to be writing out. This is what it's going to look like. That must be quite the process to be able to put them together and say, yeah, that
A
looks
lot of
great.
gear shifting.
Yeah.
I do my own photography for it. I've got my studio set up for portfolios, so that works. There's a lot of the skills that I have as a professional artist that have come in very handy when it comes to writing books.
Yes, I can see that.
It surprised me. Even the process reminds me a lot of oil painting.
Why is that? Can you explain?
Sure, you take down your notes as a writer, you're doing notes, they're scattered all over the place, but you got to get the ideas out. That's your sketches. Now you're doing your timeline. That's getting your sketches onto the canvas. We call it making the cartoon. Then you start blocking in colors. I start writing in sections of the book, fleshing them out. And then you get to the first real layer where you're putting in your shadows, your highlights, your details, and then you refine it. You refine it. You refine it layer after layer after layer. That's like the editing process for the
Oh,
book.
okay.
So it's very similar, and it takes about the same time. I've had paintings that have taken over a year to paint.
See, and it's
So
amazing because again, I tried, like so many other kids, I tried. I taught myself how to play the drums. I tried to teach myself how to play the bass. I tried to do the art stuff. It just didn't work. And the from what you're telling me, the whole thing that you see in the movies where the guy just gets artistic inspiration, paints the whole thing is a bunch of bullshit. No?
it's a rarity. And by that I mean you have to be like a Mozart-like prodigy. It doesn't really happen. If you're starting off with drawing, give it time. It takes years to be able to draw what's in front of you.
Yeah.
I've had students weeping because they drew a white box that I had there. I have like regular shapes, spheres,
Hmm.
triangles, boxes. And one of the things that they get up to is drawing those accurately. We use measurements, and they're weeping because they swear they got it right. Nope, you're off by this much. This angle
Yeah.
is not. And they realize they haven't really seen anything. They've only seen their assumptions about everything instead of how things actually look. And you have to break that. You have to break that thinking so that you are drawing what you're seeing. And then you can start drawing what's in your head. It takes years.
So
It
have
takes
you ever
years.
considered yourself a natural artist or known somebody who is a natural artist who could just take pen to paper or take pencil and say, shh, this is what I have
Uh,
without,
I started drawing when I was 4,
okay.
and I was drawing fairly complicated things, and that got me into like art talent classes and things like that. And I take art instruction very seriously, and I practice very obsessively. So if you're obsessed with the art, then yes, you're natural at it. But if you're not obsessed with the art, you can still learn the skills. If you can catch a ball, or if you can throw a dart, you can draw, but you got to give yourself years.
It's really interesting that you bring that theory up because I've been teaching for the last couple of years, and the school that I'm at now, well, obviously we're off because of all the craziness in the world. The last part of it was doing the weightlifting for the football team. And I'm getting a little bit older, so I can't lift what I want. But every now and then, you would have a kid come in and just be like, "Wow!" And I said, "You know what? If I'm going to teach you how to throw that pass, I'm going to teach you how to write an essay. If I'm going to teach you how to deadlift 500 pounds, like there's very few stories of anybody walking in a gym and deadlifting 500 pounds.
Yeah,
You're gonna rip your back out. You might do
yeah,
some
yeah.
weight and be
That's not
impressive to
going to go
people,
well.
but no, you know what I mean. You have to learn that structure and that mechanic of how to do it. So every now and then the kids will be like, "Wow, I can't believe you did that," and I tell them all the time, like I don't think I've mastered any of the skills to teach them. I said, but I understand them well enough to explain them to you. So I just find that fascinating, kind of debunking the idea of an artist. You just say, "Ugh," and all of a sudden you've got this big work in front of
No, no, it doesn't really happen. As Salvador Dali once said, after 40 years of painting, even I do not know how to paint.
you. And again, really, really interesting. His stuff seemed to become more. And again, I'm not an art critic by any means, but his stuff seemed to be becoming more primitive and more basic as he got older. And I always wondered if that was why by design that
A
he was
lot of
trying
it,
to break down some of it and say, this is what you have to do.
he didn't have the stamina by the time he was in his late 70s.
Yeah, because he lived to be what, like 90 or something? He lived to be pretty old.
88, I
88,
believe.
yeah.
And by that point, he didn't have the just the physical stamina. And so he simplified. You can still get the point across, you can still get it out of you, but it's much more simplified than it was before. Whereas earlier in his career, not the very early days where he's doing cubism and all that,
Hmm.
but in that midpoint of his career where he was trying to really render things in a more realistic sense, that took a lot of time and working 7 days a week, which is basically what I do. Uh, so you
So
have to
everything
be,
everything is in home with you, with the studio
yes,
behind you, with the painting. Everything is in home. Yeah.
yeah. My
So
studio is
this
actually upstairs.
Oh, okay. So this pandemic thing really hasn't changed too much for you.
Nah,
Yeah,
not at all.
we've had to kind of uh, shift things online and do all this. Now between this and everything else, this you know what I'm kind of enjoying it. Kind of figuring out how to get through the day without just sleeping all day and doing nothing.
I wake up and my hand goes, "We got to paint." Oh, okay,
Oh,
okay.
that's amazing. That's amazing.
Mhm.
It really is to still have that passion and that dedication to it for all this time. The last thing I really want to look at and talk about a little bit was you touched on it with the painting is just the editing process. And again, what I find amazing with the editing process is, are you someone who like do you have a little crew? Do you have beta readers? Are you just sending it off to the publisher and saying, "Hey, here you go, take a look at it for me"?
No, I've got a small team of people who are very close to me who are beta reading and who are checking grammar. I have one person who that's what she's doing. She's checking the grammar, and she's very good and she's very precise about it. And I have got someone who is looking at the content. Is this easy to understand? Are there any confusing points here? And I have people who are looking at the flow. How caught up are they? You know, where do they, you know, where are they getting caught up? Where are they getting shocked? Because there are some, you know, there's everything in this. There's philosophy, there's romance, there's even a touch of eroticism. There's all kinds of social issues, people of all different walks of life, and they don't have any of the difficulties social difficulties that we have today, because they would consider us all savages. We live on a planet and we're all a bunch of savages. So getting the society down, getting the culture unified, I have people who help me with that, and their help is invaluable. So
Because my big question is the language, and this is what I was thinking when we were talking about the ship earlier, and I was trying to do the little bit of research on the book. Is this a stilted kind of English? Is this a very proper English? Are they talking differently because because now you don't have any outside influences? Obviously, you have a lot of influences because you have all these people on the ship, but you're not going anywhere outside of that sphere. So has it changed to a kind of shorthand, or did you just say, you know, screw it, they're just going to talk in English?
I have assumed, and from the dream this was the case, they did not speak English.
Okay.
They did not speak a language any of us would understand. They had pretty much their own language based on like 20 other languages mashed together. And if you were to go onto this ship, you wouldn't understand anything anyone's saying. So I translated the entire book to English, except for very specific terms that have to do with time, that have to do with certain pieces of equipment, that have to do with their own take on certain things. You know, they have nicknames for things that we wouldn't get. So I have a glossary in the back of the book.
I would just that's what I was getting to. Is there a point that you do that? Because I don't know if you went through this stage, but pretty well anybody our age, you know, went through that stage where you talk like Alex from Clockwork Orange. You know, everybody, you know, the garbles and the, you know, the talking about different things, and that's what I wanted to know about in space. Was, you know, was this broken down with other languages, or did it just become so connected that now, like, again, you say to us it would be gibberish. To them, this is how it's presented. This is how you speak.
They would think that we speak very archaically, and they would need a dictionary.
Okay, all right.
So I have that glossary.
That it's amazing. And again, I hate to bring mine up when I'm talking to other people, but mine was based in a certain culture in a certain area, and I had people all over me about the language. And I said, look, I didn't work with a bunch of rocket scientists, and some people were offended. The one woman counted, you know, on the one page alone, there's like 17 times you say fuck, and I'm like, you know, I was making it smaller. There are some guys that can't, you know, it's a verb, it's your first name, it's a pronoun, it's an adverb. The big thing that we
Ganges has adult language.
So I was going to say, in space, are we having something that's comparable to what we would consider our swearing, or do we not know because we don't know the language?
In fact, the word fuck comes up quite a bit because the equivalent of that is being translated into a word that we would understand.
So it's made very clear to us that we might not understand that word, but this is what it means.
But yeah, it's very easy. I just translated that. The only things I translated on the glossary were things, for example, it's rush slice. I only have a paring sliver to get to the tram. Now, get to the tram, you kind of understand.
Yeah, okay, that part
that's not a big deal. Rush slice. They divide their day. It's not called a day. It's called a rotation. Good rotation to you. Their rotation is split into 8 slices. One of them is called rush slice. That's when everyone tries to get to their post.
Okay, so that's like the rush hour, the busy part of the day, your work day?
Having a paring sliver is about 20 minutes.
So a break?
That's an eighth of a slice.
Okay.
It's called a paring slice. There are also things they call their year a spiral, hence the crucible spirals.
Okay.
They don't
Now,
have
does your year
anything.
still run like ours does on the Mayan calendar, or are we having a longer or shorter year?
Nope, nope. Because of the way the ship rotates, it's based on the ship's rotation, not a planet's rotation.
So would it always be, because you're in space, would that rotation always be roughly the same length, the same way that
Oh,
we have either
yes, very
365 or
consistent,
364 days? Okay.
very consistent. And the more midships you get, which means center towards the spine, the lower your apparent gravity. And the more out to top sides near the hull, the heavier the gravity becomes because it's all spinning.
Okay.
Again,
That's
no grav
amazing.
plates, nothing like that, nothing that might be too difficult to repair out in the unknown. You're just spinning these things, and that does the job.
I don't know if it's because we're usually looking at a utopian or dystopian society, how we start the conversation with off, but I've just always found it a little false that all these societies don't have some form of swearing. Now,
Oh,
obviously, it's
yeah,
going to take
I
away
don't
from
hear
a
that.
book that, every other word's going to be the F word, or, this fucking guy, fucking son of a bitch. But there's got to be something out in that, no matter how, I'm trying to choose my words the right way here. No matter how developed this society is, your wife's still going to cheat on you, maybe. Or, you're going to bang your toe. So there's got to be an equivalent to saying, fucking God, you know what I mean? I've always found that a little false with these stories. Now, obviously, we're not going to see Captain Picard or Ben Kenobi talk that way, but there has to, is there an average race of people on your job? Like, there's got to be somebody cleaning the garbage in the spaceship,
Oh, of
right? And I'm
course.
not saying
Of
this
course.
to make fun or to poke it or whatsoever, but for some reason, I always thought that when I was a kid, who turns the lights off at night? There's got to be. Not everybody on this ship is a genius. Not everybody is running the ship.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
that's awesome. That's really great to think because again, we were saying before, some people they put too much thought into one area for it, and other things aren't explained.
And that's because they're not really looking at the human element.
Yes.
I'm looking very, very closely at the human element in Crew of Ganges. These are still human beings, and they are going to have the same pitfalls and foibles that we do. They may call it other things, but it's still dealing with people.
And again, my limited knowledge. I hate to keep coming back to these examples, but like the original Star Trek, I wasn't a big fan. Now, by the time I was a kid, they were all in reruns, but you know, but Kirk had his foibles.
Oh,
You know
yeah.
what I mean? And Bones was always my favorite because he lost his mind in anything. You know what I mean? Was always screaming at Spock or something.
Yeah.
You don't see that carry out into a lot of other stories. And I just, these people
Yeah.
have to have a relationship beyond this ship, or you have to have people that, like we never would have met if we didn't start. We didn't, we didn't reach out and say, hey, let's talk about each other's books. There has to be things outside your sphere of influence that are still influencing you. And that seems to be lost, I think, in a lot of literature. It always annoys me when everybody talks the same way.
That was the genius of Roddenberry. He really kept the stories to the human level. He kept the characterizations very human, the interactions very much in keeping with their personalities. And he wanted to show very human stories that had a lot of questions to them. Whereas a lot of the other sci-fis wanted to just answer everything.
Yeah.
And that doesn't seem genuine to me. It seems like
No,
it's missing the point. This is the story that never ends.
because
As long as humanity exists, there are
we're
certain things that will crop up.
my personal opinion has always been I don't think we're ever going to evolve beyond a certain point. We have the technology and everything is changing, but we're still, we're British. There's no two ways around it. And I don't want to make this a whole thing about cancel culture and get off topic, but you know, Kirk floating through space and trying to sleep with every chick he sees and his swaggering. People wouldn't put up with that for a second now. And Bones' comments about green blood and being a half-breed, it had been canceled after the first episode. And I think that just to me, it made everybody a little more human. And it gave you the flip of it where Spock could basically stand there and say, these humans are idiots.
Exactly. Well, that's the position that the ship's AI is in. It is an
and
artificial intelligence that is enlightened.
do you see, like, I enjoy seeing them see the flaws in themselves, but the flaws in other people.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
the AI is like, well, if nothing else, I've been here for thousands of spirals, and I'm still entertained because the humans keep doing stuff that's crazy.
Again, you know, the old, I try so hard to not be a cliche guy, but the whole history repeats itself, or we never learn anything, or if we do learn it, we only learn what we want to learn and we kick out the rest.
Yes, very much so.
That's
Very much
amazing.
so.
So what are you looking at for the date for number 2 in our series?
Number 2 should be
Anything
coming out by the end of this month.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what if people are going on this? I was telling you earlier, we're going to put a whole bunch of stuff on the video so people get a little read, get this, get that. What is the platform that you are asking people to go to? Is it just as easy right now to go to Amazon to get your stuff?
Yes, Amazon is the place to get my stuff, both ebook and the printed version. They're both on Amazon and Kindle.
This is really weird. Have you ever tried to push up? Yeah, have you ever tried to put in your name like in Amazon Germany or something?
No,
I did it the one night. I just did it for the one night for the hell of it. And I don't speak German, but I speak French. So I found the write up for my book in French, and I'm like, the write up for my book in German. I'm like, that's really cool. I don't know what it says. I hope it says the same things it says in the other ones, but this whole Amazon process is just like how they pick up your book or my book, or they do this or they do that, or other people say, well, why aren't they doing this for me? I don't think any of us will ever be able to understand their algorithms, but I still think it's the best platform to have it put out there.
I did plug in my name into Google and found that there were book suppliers in New Zealand, Australia, India that had picked up Crew of Ganges.
And how or why? This is what I'm saying. I'm not putting your book down, or I'm not saying your book is not.
I have no idea. I honestly have no idea.
Like for me, the big thing, it hit Amazon. My stepson saw it and said, "You're on Amazon." I'm like, "Oh, fucking right on. Where else are we?" And then he's like, "Well, let's punch it into Chapters." I don't know if you're familiar with Chapters Indigo. That's the big one in Canada.
Oh, yeah.
Boom. But Chapters and Indigo refused to put up the picture of the book. So I'm like, well, who's buying a generic thing that looks like a book? Then I went to Barnes and Noble. They had a great write-up, fantastic layout, the front and the back of the book, even had the little promo that I wrote. But unfortunately, it looks like Barnes and Nobles is going down the tubes. So not too many people are going to Barnes and Nobles to buy it. So I'm just trying to figure, like all of us, I gave up the notion of making $1 million with this. But if it is selling, hey, let's have it moving. Let's sell these guys.
$10 is $10, as Geddy Lee once said.
Exactly. So it's funny. Somebody dropping a Canadian band on me. That's awesome. It's just the whole process has just been amazing. And this part of the thing I try and talk with people about too, just, how to get it out there, how to do this, how to do that. I don't know. It's just, it's amazing. So when you got a guideline for 3, when you're going to put it all together, and then are these guys going to be put to bed? And that's it?
The third book, Painful Medicine, is going to be coming out probably between November and December of this year. If I can get it out earlier, I will, but I'm taking my time like a good oil painter.
Yeah.
I want all of my T's crossed and my I's dotted and not the other way around.
I don't know how it is for you, but like for July 19th will be a year that mine's been out. And like obsessively for the first month, like nobody's bought a copy. And then we had a little rush, and then we had this and we had that. And I don't know if it's just from doing these interviews or meeting other people, but like I don't want to say it's blown up, but it's gone up tremendously in the last couple of months. And then my publisher just said, well, dude, like, you trying to, cushion the blow to me, but you're a nobody. So maybe a couple people bought this book and the word get out, but this guy, I just still amazed by the whole process, because I have way too many people on Facebook that, it's the editor's fault, or it's this or it's that. And I never ever want to criticize anybody else's work, but it's just like, maybe your book's not that good, because I started out with nothing.
It has very little to do with the work itself. It has a lot to do with exposure.
Yes.
And that's something you learn in the art world. You're dealing with art critics, the art galleries. Woohoo! Oh, let me tell you, no one can be as scathing as an art critic, especially after a few. And
wow,
that made me realize that, do I really need the galleries if I've already got some collectors, if I'm getting the word out through social media? Do I really need these guys? And that was the decision I made to self-publish, was like, I like being a one-man band, because then the only person who's at fault is me. And I'll take that hit. And so I market my books by doing Amazon advertising. I get onto Facebook. I've got live feeds about the books and about the artwork. I do art demos. I've even done art demos of these covers. Now, this cover was painted on Facebook. And if you go to Gulotta Studios on Facebook,
Wow.
you'll see it.
Now, are you are that, as far as the art goes, is that just for you? Are you selling your other things, like as somebody wanted a book cover, or somebody wanted to get a hold of you and check it out?
The problem with doing someone else's book covers is that you're trying to do someone else's vision.
Yeah.
I'm not an illustrator. I'm a gallery painter. So I'm used to doing my visions. So I don't know if I would do anyone else's vision justice. What I have had is people, I've had the band Quark Space, Don Falcone, and a couple of others come to me saying, we want this painting, we want to buy it, and we want to put it on a CD cover. I'm like,
Okay.
go for it. And then we do the
Yeah.
licensing thing and all of that.
That's awesome.
So that I'm much happier with. If someone sees one of my paintings and say, hey, I would love that as my book cover, well, just contact me. You know, if someone wanted this as a book cover, sure, no problem. We'll talk business. So that's how I prefer to do it.
Yeah, we're in a quandary right now where I'm trying to not the mistakes, but the things I didn't know when we did the first one. So now we're coming to a cover and kind of a little tagline phrase for the next one. And it's just it's really, you know, I don't want to say writing the book is easy, because the books take time, but the book sometimes seems to be the smallest when you go back to think about all that other little things. And you're like, well, where do I put this? What do I do with this? It's maddening. We had I'm sure you've seen it in some of my promos. The little tagline for my book was "Getting out is never easy." So now we've got somebody who's looking to put that on T-shirts. We've got somebody who's looking to do something, and now we're trying to come up with a second one. And people think they're helping you by sending you ideas, and you don't want to hurt their feelings, but you're like, dude, that idea sucks, or you have to tell them it's derivative of some other idea, or you read that somewhere, you just don't remember that you did, and it's like, the whole process has just amazed me. This is why I've been so happy to be able to reach out to other people, because like I told you before we start recording, I might have looked over your book and went, whatever. But then, you know, just there's value in all this. I'm sure there's some pretty horrible books out there that have been written, but anything that I've got, like one of the first women I interviewed was it was a romance thing, not my thing, but it was well written. I knew some of the areas she was talking about. Just, you know, I'm not adverse to talking with anybody about it. I think it's beneficial to everybody. There's so much material out there.
There really is. There really is. And the more we are able to help each other, and the more we're able to get the word out about it all, the better it is also for the consumer. Now they can see and go, oh, wow, that sounds interesting, even though he doesn't like it, or, you know, she loves this one, but that's not really my thing. But they get some information.
Yes.
And that's where you have your ratings, your write-ups, your reviews. These are all really a necessity in getting the word out there.
Yeah.
So if people feel more comfortable saying, yeah, I'm going to buy this one.
That's excellent. You've got Gulotta Studios. You have Clockmaker out. You have Crew of Ganges. Anything else that you'd like to put out there if people do want to get a hold of you for anything, or just go on Facebook and look up your studio?
If you look up the studio on Facebook, Gulotta Studios, you'll find links to everything else.
Okay.
There's also a Crew of Ganges, the Crucible Spirals page on Facebook that talks about Clockmaker a little bit as well.
Okay.
And gives people updates as to what I'm up to, what I'm doing, and how it's being done, plus some videos about my thoughts on creating a history for your work. For example, Crew of Ganges has thousands of years of history. I wrote all that down.
I've been trying to catch a little bit more of your stuff. I don't want to get too personal here, but you had some things for a while where you weren't online, so I'm catching up now to see what it is you put before and all that. And some of it's really interesting to have the whole universe, the back idea behind it. Like I said, I think it would really benefit people to, I mean, you know, really want them to buy your books, but I think it would also benefit them to go back and look at this other stuff and say, okay, this is what he was thinking here.
Yes, absolutely.
Right, to try and get the whole bigger puzzle,
the bigger picture that I can't put on the back cover.
Yes.
Here's some extra stuff so that you know what I've been thinking while writing this book. And like I said, even with Clockmaker, I've got people who say they want me to do a second book because the characters were very compelling and memorable, and the story was very interesting, and they want to see more. So
I
I'm
totally
thinking
understand
of
that.
doing that.
David, this has been excellent. We've
Oh,
as
thank you.
usual, we've gone over our thing because it's been so interesting. I might actually have to cut this one in two. I've had people say they have no problem
I have no
with the
problem with
longer
that.
video. No, I have no problem with it at all. It's great. It's just again, some of the I don't know. They tried to I've been trying to do the whole going down the YouTube rabbit hole to figure out how to best process these videos. That's why the whole time we've been talking, whenever you come up with something else for your background of the writing, so I can put in the tags. But I don't know who watches these and who doesn't. Some people are watching them. We're starting to get about 100 hit the video. But
There you go.
I would love to. You have sent me Clockmaker in the mail. I would love
Yep.
to if we can sit back down, maybe in a couple of weeks, and then kind of go back and forth. I can tell you what I think about Clockmaker. You can tell me what you think about Down the Lane, and then Crew of Ganges will be next. That might take a while because it's a big ass book from what you're saying.
Yes.
But
The next two are bigger.
you know what? I personally don't have a problem. I don't know if you saw the picture I had online. A friend of mine gave me a big box of books the other day. It was all mob related stuff, organized crime stuff. And I don't know if you're familiar with him. It's a reporter out of New York called Selwyn Rapp, who's big on doing the five families, the traditional mafia family. And the book's like 800 pages long. And it shies people away from it. And I was like, oh God, no! I finally got a good copy of the five
Kind of
families.
dive into, you know.
I've had the bookcase for about a week. I'm halfway through that one already, and that's while doing my other stuff in between. So yeah, something that's got 400 or 500 pages. Now bring it on, man. That was my argument with mine. Do we throw on another 30 pages, another 40 pages, and then everybody editing saying, you got what you got. Maybe we shoot for a longer length for the next one.
More the merrier, as far as I'm concerned. Let's
Yeah,
get a nice
you
full
know,
story.
I think anybody who's a big reader, you always get to that, unless you just didn't enjoy the book, you get to that, oh man, the book's over. Like it would have been cool to have another chapter, it would have had another write-up. It don't come that way.
Yeah.
Way it goes. Thank you so much for your time, sir. We
Thank
will be
you.
back on 32 all the way shortly. And hopefully, like I said, you're back up in a little bit.
Yeah.
It's great talking to you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.